The EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network presents Vatican Insider with Joan Lewis. Each week, Joan brings you news from inside the Vatican and the Church around the world, as well as interviews and answers to your questions. Now, here's the host of Vatican Insider, Joan Lewis.
Welcome to Vatican Insider at this halfway mark in December. Hard to believe, right? This week in the interview segment, I present a special on the wonderful shrine of Our Lady of Loreto on Italy's Adriatic coast. Because of the length of that special, the news segment this week is a bit shorter than usual, with abbreviated summaries of papal homilies, greetings to groups, etc. Okay, let's go right to the news highlights. Sunday, December 8th, Feast of the Immaculate Conception. Pope Francis celebrated Mass with the 21 new cardinals he had created on Saturday, along with scores of other members of the College of Cardinals who live in Rome or came for the consistory. At 4 p.m., Francis went to Piazza di Spagna, the Spanish Steps, for the traditional December 8th prayer at the foot of the statue of Mary Immaculate, at whose pedestal was placed the papal floral homage. Monday, December 9th, Pope Francis met with participants in an international conference at the Pontifical Lateran University discussing the future of theology. He invited theologians to develop a creative and inclusive approach to theology rooted in faith to make it relevant in today's society, marred by the complexities of ideology and polarization. Also Monday, greeting members of Manos Unidas, United Hands, Pope Francis recognized the sensitivity and fortitude proper to the feminine genius that marks their work of promoting progress in developing countries. Manos Unidas was a response of the women of Catholic Action in Spain to an appeal from the Food and Agricultural Organization in 1959 to feed the hunger for bread, culture, and God. Tuesday, December 10th, marking Human Rights Day, Pope Francis urged government leaders to listen to the cry for peace of the millions of people deprived of their most basic rights of life and peace due to war. He said these are the essential conditions for the exercise of all other rights. This day is observed annually on the anniversary of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Also December 10th, in a message signed by the Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin, Pope Francis sent blessings, prayers, and encouragement to the Rwandan Church for their Eucharistic Congress, emphasizing hope and peace through the Eucharist. Wednesday, December 11th, at the weekly general audience in the Paul VI Hall, Pope Francis focused on the Holy Spirit in the life of the Church, the, quote, ever-flowing source of Christian hope. He thus concluded his cycle of catecheses entitled The Holy Spirit and the Bride. The Holy Spirit guides the people of God towards Jesus, our hope. At the end of the audience, the Pope prayed for a solution in Syria that responsibly promotes the stability and unity of the country. In the wake of an escalation of violence and the fall of the Assad regime, Francis said he follows every day what is happening in the country, and that he prays for the peace and security of its people. Also Wednesday, Pope Francis addressed members of the Human Economic Forum, emphasizing the need for sustainable development to be centered on human dignity, global collaboration, and the universal common good. It is essential, he said, to place the human person at the heart of all our concerns and activities. Also Wednesday, the Holy See Press Office announced that the Pope has accepted the resignation of Giuseppe Pignatoni, who has served as the president of the Vatican Tribunal since 2019. He had reached the age of 75, the age limit set for members of the Vatican judiciary. Francis Tuesday afternoon had met with and thanked Pignatoni in person for the service rendered over these years. The resignation becomes effective December 31st, 2024. Also Wednesday, the Holy Father met members of the organization Rescue People Saving People, and he praised the worthy work they do for thousands of migrants traveling across the Mediterranean. Since 2014, almost 31,000 migrants have gone missing attempting to cross the sea. In 2023 alone, over 3,000 people were confirmed to have died making the crossing. Thursday, December 12th, was a very big day for Pope Francis, who met with Spanish seminarians from the major interdiocesan seminary of Santiago de Compostela. He sent a message to the people of Rome, asking them to show hospitality to the many pilgrims who will be traveling to Rome for the Jubilee year. He greeted a delegation of the Evangelical Baptist Roma Mission in Italy, and also held a 30-minute meeting with Mahmoud Abbas, President of the State of Palestine. At 6 p.m., Francis presided at Mass in St. Peter's Basilica for the feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe. In addition, Thursday, the Vatican released the Pope's message for the 58th World Day of Peace on January 1st, 2025, on the theme, "Forgive us our trespasses, grant us your peace." Friday, December 13th, Francis received in audience the President of the Council of Ministers ad interim of the Lebanese Republic, Najib Mikati. Also December 13, the feast of St. Lucy, the patron saint of eye ailments. The Pope sent a letter to Archbishop Francesco Lomato of Syracuse, Italy, on the occasion of the temporary transfer from Venice to Syracuse of the body of St. Lucy. What a week here at the Vatican. Those were the news highlights. But now stay tuned for my special report on the magnificent shrine of Our Lady of Loreto.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
Thank you for all that you do on Catholic Radio. I'm a convert. I'm a teacher by trade, so I've taught at Bible school, fourth grade religion classes. The last 7 years I teach confirmation, and I'm confident, there's two of us that teach, that we know the faith because of the Bible, the catechism, and you guys. So thank you.
The EWTN on-demand platform features 50 new podcasts every week, as well as an ever-expanding library of audio and video content for Catholics who want to learn more about their faith simply using their mobile device, computer, or TV. Your favorite EWTN programs are available 24/7. Visit EWTN.com and click On Demand. EWTN is the Global Catholic Network.
This is Mike and Alicia Hernan with the Messy Family Minute. St. John Paul II tells us that family is the school of virtue, but for many parents, it feels like a school of warfare. Siblings, no matter what the age, tend to have conflicts with each other over an endless number of issues. We're here to tell you, first of all, even though it feels like your children will never get along, they can be best friends someday. The fighting doesn't last forever, but you will need to be proactive in developing strong ties between siblings.
First of all, give them the tools they need to resolve conflict. That means teaching them how to listen to others, how to ask forgiveness, and how to take responsibility for their own actions. Second, resist rushing in to solve every conflict for them. They need to learn how to figure things out for themselves. And last, keep perspective. These children will be in relationship with each other for a long time. And if they aren't getting along when they are 4 or 6, don't lose heart. They will have years to figure it out with your guidance. For more resources and ideas on resolve the conflict with kids, visit us at messyfamilyminute.org.
Welcome back to Vatican Insider. Here's Joan Lewis.
Welcome to Vatican Insider in what is normally the interview segment. However, I want to dedicate this special to the Holy House of Loreto, a wondrous shrine in Italy, its history and meaning, a place where hic verbum caro factum est, here the Word was made flesh. To go back just a bit, on Friday, November 1st, 2019, Mass was celebrated at the Basilica of the Holy House in Loreto, Italy, for the solemn proclamation of the Loretan Jubilee, proclaimed by Pope Francis, a year dedicated to the Holy House. Tradition says it was here, within the walls of this small home, miraculously relocated from Nazareth to Loreto, that Mary received the angel Gabriel's message of the Annunciation. In fact, Nazareth today is home to what the shrine's papal delegate called, quote, the other half of Mary's house. The Holy Year began December 8, 2019, with the opening of the Holy Door by Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin. The year will end on December 10th, 2020, 100 years after Pope Benedict XV on March 24, 1920, named Our Lady of Loreto the patron saint of aviation and those who work in aviation or travel by air. The Pope had also decreed that the Feast of Our Lady of Loreto will also be inscribed in the Roman calendar on the 10th of December. He had visited the shrine on March 25th, Feast of the Annunciation, last year. For a century, pilots and travelers have prayed to the Virgin Mary to keep them safe while in the air. Marking this milestone anniversary of the declaration of Our Lady of Loreto as the patron saint of aviation and aviators, Pope Francis in 2019 granted a Loretan Jubilee for all air travelers and for pilgrims who come to the shrine of the Holy House. In a conversation with Vatican News, Archbishop Fabio Dalcin, the papal delegate to the shrine, said it was a great opportunity to strengthen the bonds of devotion to the Mother of Heaven. The Archbishop added it's good news because it's not just about members of the Air Force, but all air travelers. Looking back into history, he noted that the veterans of the First World War asked the Pope at the time to obtain special protection from Mary. The first planes at the time were called flying churches. And trusting to Our Lady of Loreto, all those who boarded an aircraft was therefore completely natural. We are called to fly high. We are called to holiness, to the fullness of life and happiness that is the holiness offered by the Lord. Several years ago, as part of a series I was writing on shrines in Italy, I visited the Holy House of Loreto. It was my first trip to the Marche region and to this Marian shrine, and it was a never-to-be-forgotten weekend. Pope John Paul once said that the Holy House of Loreto is not an icon of abstract truth, but an event and a mystery, the incarnation of the Word. It is with deep emotion that when entering the revered chapel, one reads the words above the altar, Hic verbum caro factum est, here the Word was made flesh. My last visit was in November 2017 with the Women of Wine, Women in the New Evangelization, as we visited the shrine of the Holy House of Loreto as part of a pilgrimage. Once again, it was a beautiful, almost mystical experience. We had arrived from Assisi, a 2-hour bus ride, just in time for the 8 a.m. Mass, after which we had more than 90 minutes to explore the Basilica and the Holy House and have quiet time for further prayer. We explored in small groups of 3 or 4, admiring the magnificent side chapels and those of the apse, but spending much of our time in Mary's home. At one point I spotted a Basilica volunteer and I stopped to ask her where the American chapel was. In wonderful English, she replied, "Come, I'll show you." When we got to the chapel, Kathy, one of our group, was also there, and Sabrina spent the next 15 minutes telling us glorious stories and historic details about the Holy House. We were riveted, and we felt so privileged by her presence. She also showed us several other chapels, in particular the stunning Spanish chapel, before we had to meet our group at 12:30. The Holy House of Loreto has been, in fact, one of the world's premier shrines dedicated to Mary for over 700 years. According to tradition, the home in which Mary lived, in which the angel Gabriel appeared to her, announcing she would become the Mother of God, and the home she shared with Jesus and Joseph, was transported by angels to this Italian hill town overlooking the Adriatic on the night of December 10th, 1294. In the 3rd century, Mary's dwelling in Nazareth was already used as a place of worship. The site of the Incarnation then consisted of a grotto, venerated today in the Basilica of the Annunciation in Nazareth, and an adjacent 3-walled house over which a synagogue had been built. By the 5th century, a more solid basilica had been constructed, and by the 12th century, it was protected by the majestic Basilica of the Crusades. Tradition says that when the Crusaders, protectors of holy places, were expelled from Palestine in 1291, the safety of the Holy House was in doubt. It was thus transported, and legend says angels had a hand in this, first to Illyria, modern-day Croatia, and then in 1294 to Loreto, a laurel-covered hill in what were then the Papal States. The name Loreto comes, in fact, from the Latin laurus, meaning laurel. The adjective is Loretan. According to Capuchin Father Giuseppe Santarelli, author of numerous books on this shrine, recent findings show that the so-called translation, the move, of the house to Loreto occurred not through angelic ministrations, but through human intervention. A recently discovered document from 1294, in fact, testifies that one Niceforo Angelo, the ruler of Epiro, gave his daughter, as part of her dowry for her marriage to the son of King Charles of Naples, numerous precious possessions, including, quote, the holy stones carried away from the house of Our Lady, the Virgin Mother of God. Other documents from the same period assert that a 13th century family named Angelo or De Angeli saved the stones of the Holy House of Nazareth from destruction by Muslims and had them transported to Loreto in the Papal States for safekeeping. Angelo means angel in Italian, and De Angeli means of the angels. That part of Our Lady's house which can be seen today, the original 3 stone walls, is encased in a rectangular, ornately sculpted marble enclosure called a screen. This was commissioned by Pope Julius II in the 16th century and built according to a design by Bramante. The western external wall forms the backdrop for the shrine's main altar. The house itself is quite small, about 12 by 28 feet. Today there's an altar where the original house opened onto the grotto. Above the altar is a small statue of Our Lady with Child, clothed in the traditional dalmatic. The original 14th century statue, carved from cedar wood from Lebanon and darkened over the centuries by candle smoke, was destroyed by fire in 1921. The current statue was carved from a Lebanese cedar from the Vatican Gardens and was painted to resemble the earlier Madonna, though it is somewhat darker. The 3 original stone walls are barely 9 feet high. The masonry above them was added at a later date to accommodate a vaulted ceiling to make it more suitable for worship. Archaeological studies have revealed that the house had no foundations and was set high on a public road. Studies have also shown that the stonework is indigenous to Palestine and that the walls bear graffiti, words that are written or etched in stone, similar to writings in Palestine and especially Nazareth. One, for example, bears an inscription in Greek with 2 words that seem Hebrew, lamed and va, that say, O Jesus Christ, Son of God. This same invocation has been found in the Grotto of Conan in Nazareth, alongside the Grotto of the Annunciation. About 60 graffiti have been found, many of which are considered by experts to be similar to those of the Judeo-Christians in the Holy Land, including Nazareth, of ancient times. The technique used for the outer finish of some of the stones is similar to that employed by the Nabateans and widespread in Palestine at the times of the Romans. 5 crosses made of a red material were found walled up among the stones of the Holy House. It is believed they belonged to crusaders or to knights of a military order that defended holy relics. Still visible on the north wall, one of the 2 longer walls, is the wood lintel where the original door used to be. Today, pilgrims enter and exit by 2 small doors created in the north and south walls. Entering the Holy House imbues the visitor with an indescribable sensation. When I was there, the silence was deafening. There was a definite feeling of awe, intellectual, physical, and spiritual. Some pilgrims, because of limited space, only a few people enter at a time. Some pilgrims appear to be in a trance. Yet others, like I did, gently finger the markings on the 2,000-year-old walls, or simply lean against them for a time, as if to draw strength, as if to feel the presence of Mary and the Holy Family, as if to draw inspiration for prayer and, perhaps just once in a lifetime, to say the perfect prayer. These hallowed walls seem like umbilical cords to our past, walls which, if they could talk, would let us hear Mary at prayer, Joseph telling Mary about his workday, Jesus as he cries, talks, or walks for the first time, the Holy Family around a table as they eat their nightly meal, perhaps with a guest. This was a family's home, and so you wonder, were there both tears and laughter? Were there hot, dusty days, cold winter nights, sleepless nights? Did the Holy Family ever wonder where their next meal would come from? What we know for certain is that this was a home filled with love. While millions of pilgrims visit Loreto each year, no one knows precisely how many have come since that December night in 1294. Just as the pilgrims are countless, so too are the miracles and conversions linked to Loreto. Over the years, many thousands of votive offerings have been left by the faithful for graces received, although only a few hundred are actually on display in the magnificently frescoed treasure room. The imposing Basilica of the Holy House was begun in the latter half of the 15th century. Enormous bronze doors set in the Renaissance-style facade welcome us to the interior, which is in the form of a Latin cross with a nave and 2 aisles. 12 side altars fill the right and left walls. As we reach the Holy House, the basilica widens to reveal 13 stunning chapels built around the north, east, and south sides of the shrine. These chapels were built with the offerings of the faithful, including those from France, Croatia, English-speaking American Catholics, Germany, Poland, Spain, and Switzerland. The artwork, the frescoes, sculptures, marble work, and stained glass windows are of such striking, exquisite beauty as to leave the visitor breathless. Make sure you have an excellent guide or an excellent guidebook. The basilica is at the eastern end of the Piazza della Madonna and offers breathtaking views of the surrounding countryside and the Adriatic. It's flanked by an 18th century bell tower and 16th to 18th century buildings that house a museum, administrative offices, and those of the Pontifical Delegate to the Shrine and the Universal Congregation of the Holy House. The latter was founded in 1883 for the purpose of spreading knowledge of and devotion to the Holy House of Loreto. The feast of the Shrine of the Holy House is December 10th. Loreto is a pontifical shrine, has a special juridical status, and is administered by the Prelature of the Holy House. The prelate and pontifical delegate today is Archbishop Fabio Dalcin. Pope John Paul visited Loreto 3 times, 1994, 1995, and 2004. Pope Benedict visited Loreto in 2012 for the first time as Pope, but he had been there on 7 previous occasions between 1985 and 2002. In 1985, as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, he went on pilgrimage with the personnel of the congregation. In 1988, he attended a 3-day celebration during the Marian year. In 1991, he was in Loreto for a town twinning between Loreto and Altetting, a favorite Bavarian shrine of the Son of Bavaria. In 1994, the Cardinal went on pilgrimage with his personal secretary at the time, Monsignor Joseph Clemens. In 1995, he went for an International Mariological Congress, and in 1999, he went on a private pilgrimage with his brother, Monsignor Georg Ratzinger. His last visit as Cardinal was in November 2002, when he stopped in Loreto as a guest of the then prelate, Archbishop Angelo Comastri, on his way to give a speech in Ancona. His successor, Pope Francis, as I said earlier, visited Loreto on March 25, 2019. Here's one lovely story I found about the journey of the Holy House of Loreto. Quote, "Now, in more detail, here's the story of the first stage in the journey of the angels who carried the Holy House high above the mountains and deserts of the Holy Land, across the expansive Mediterranean and Adriatic seas to Illyria. On May 10, 1291, it quietly set down in the little hamlet of Tersato in Illyria, now known as Croatia, far from the battle cries of Palestine. It was early in the morning when the local people discovered, to their great surprise, a house resting on the ground. There was no foundation under it. Curious to see what it was, they ventured inside. They found a stone altar. On the altar was a cedar statue of Mother Mary, standing with her divine Son in her arms. The infant Jesus had the first 2 fingers of his right hand extended in a blessing, and with his left hand he held a golden sphere representing the world. Both Mary and Jesus were dressed in robes. Golden crowns were poised on both their heads. The villagers were awestruck but confused until a short time later Our Lady appeared to the local priest and said, "Know that the house which has been brought up of late to your land is the same in which I was born and brought up. Here, at the annunciation of the Archangel Gabriel, I conceived the Creator of all things. Here, the Word of the Eternal Father became man. The altar which was brought with this house was consecrated by Peter, Prince of the Apostles. This house has come from Nazareth to your shores by the power of God, of whom nothing is impossible. And now, in order that you may hear testimony of all these things, be healed. Your unexpected and sudden recovery shall confirm the truth of what I have declared to you." The priest, who had suffered for years from an illness, was immediately cured. He promptly told all the people, and word of this gift from God spread throughout the countryside. Pilgrimages began coming immediately to the Holy House of Nazareth in Illyria. God had chosen to bring it to this little village, and the villagers lovingly responded by erecting a modest, quite primitive building over the house to protect it from the elements. However, the joy the Croatians had experienced at having this most precious gift in their midst was short-lived. 3 years and 5 months later, on December 10th, 1294, the Holy House disappeared overnight from Croatia, never to return. Saddened by the loss, Nicholas Frangipani, a devout man from Tersato, built a small church, a replica of the Holy House on the hill where the original had stood, and he placed an inscription, quote, "The Holy House of the Blessed Virgin come from Nazareth on the 10th of May in the year 1291, and left on the 10th of December 1294. The people from Croatia continued venerating Our Lady in their replica church. So great was their devotion that Pope Urban V sent the people of Tersato an image of Our Lady in 1367, which was said to have been painted by St. Luke the Evangelist. The people from Tersato, or Fiume as it's also called, grieved over the loss of the Holy House and the image of Our Lady. A Franciscan recalled a group coming across to Loreto from Dalmatia as late as the 16th century. He wrote, "In one particular group there were about 500 pilgrims from Tersato with their priests. They began their procession into the Church of the Holy House on their knees, crying and weeping. As they approached the Holy House, they wailed in their own tongue, 'Come back to Fiume, O Mary! Come back to Fiume, O Mary, O Mary!'" If you've been to Loreto, you know the story. If you've never been to Loreto and Italy's on your agenda, make sure you visit this sacred and beautiful shrine.
For more information on these stories, or to check out Joan's blog and to ask her a question, go to EWTN.com. That's EWTN.com. Thanks for listening to Vatican Insider on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.